Welcome to the Innovating Health podcast. This is your host, Hubert Zaitchik. Welcome to the Innovating Health podcast. My name is Hubert Zaitchik, and I'm here today with Andrea. Andrea, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started with your startup? How did you slip into the world of entrepreneurship?
Okay, I guess those are two different questions in one. I got involved in the world of entrepreneurship very serendipitously. Before I knew what startups were, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a founder. But again, I was maybe 16 or younger in high school, daydreaming about doing something very, very big. I just didn't know what it was exactly. And research wasn't quite that, but that's kind of what came closest. So that's why I studied biochemistry. I was going down that path. But then it wasn't until my semester abroad in New York where I realized that, I grew up in Spain. As you know, Europeans tend to have sometimes a limited mindset when it comes to ambition. And I was kind of, I guess, influenced by the environment. But when I went to New York for one semester, I realized that there was a pivoting point. I saw an ad in a subway for a perfume subscription business. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. A subscription business so you get perfumes until you find the one. It seems like it's the type of thing that when you think about it, you're like, I could have done that too. Like, it's so simple. But then what matters is that someone did it. And someone was there in the subway in New York and you weren't. You were just having ideas. So that's what I thought to myself. I need to start taking actions on all the ideas I have. And I think that's when I attempted to do my first startup, the first of what were like 3 failed attempts until I met Pablo, my co-founder, at a hackathon. So that answers your...
Tell us more about the failures. We want to.
You want to hear about the failures?
Yeah, you do. Because we always hear about the successes, and it's all so beautiful. And of course, everything went well. Not on this podcast, but still, yeah. Tell us if you can tell us however much you want.
I can tell you everything because there's not that much to tell. Essentially, what happened is, I wanted to start a startup in the restaurant world, in the restaurant business, which is like so far from everything I know. But it all stemmed from a problem I had, which was when I was in my 20s or late teens, I'd go out with my friends for dinner or whatever. And again, we're in Spain. We look after every cent we spend. After paying for dinner, or when we get the bill, we would spend maybe 30 minutes checking how much we each ate, how much we should all pay, et cetera, et cetera. And this would take a tremendous amount of time. And then that was all time that we were wasting at the restaurant, that the restaurant was not making any money on that table. So what I thought is it would be so easy to just scan a QR code and be like, this is what I had. Just check, just like a checklist, and say, okay, I'm gonna have pay 2/3 of the wine bottle because I had 2/3, whatever, something like that. And then COVID hit like right after that. So it was perfect timing. Like QR codes were actually becoming a thing, etc. And I remember I pitched to an investor even. Like I did a pitch deck without knowing that it was a pitch deck. I just like did everything that people told me to do. And it was just me and an idea. Like that was it. I had no background in science and computer science. Sorry, I could not build a thing. But I had this very clear vision. And I was like, I can start selling it in my city where I live. I'm gonna start going to the restaurants. I've already talked to them. Like I know there's a need. So I pitched this to an investor, and the investor went, you know what? I'm gonna fund you. I will support you just because I believe in you. But I think that in reality, you're doing the wrong thing by getting into a business or into an area that's completely different from your background, because you have a background in biotech and everyone wants to be in biotech now. That's like the hottest thing. This was 2020. I'm aging myself here, but well, it is what it is. I was still in college. And then he said, you should finish your degree, maybe spend a few years in your space in science and take note of what gaps in the market there are. And then at the same time, study in a way to become an entrepreneur one day. And then he sent me a bunch of resources, podcast courses, books, you name it. And that's what I did for the following 2 years of my life. During those 2 years, I then attempted to start 2 other startups. One wasn't, funny enough, all of the startups that I obviously came up with now exist because ideas are a dime a dozen. I remember particularly hurt when I saw the QR code that you can pay yourself, because I was so convinced of that idea. And then one day I'm having dinner in Switzerland of all places, in Zurich, and the person in the restaurant goes, yeah, just scan the QR code and you can select what you had there and pay for it directly. And I'm like, no, that could have been me. And then the two other ideas were more in science. One was mental health, because I grew up with people that were very close to me, severely affected by mental health. So I wanted to do something in that, but I struggled to find a business model really, and I did every mistake possible. I kept adding features to the idea and to the deck, and just adding ideas and adding concepts instead of actually validating and trying to find a way to make it profitable. So that didn't go long. But I did the IC co-founder matching and was trying to find a co-founder for that. It never went anywhere. And the other one was, I think, makes a lot of sense, but I was not passionate about it because I had a background in molecular biotechnology and sequencing and all of that. I was trying to find an application in the market for that. And what I thought is, if you, again, not that I had that problem ever, or especially back then, because I was super young, but I was thinking, if you want to have a kid with your partner and you know that you're a carrier for a genetic disease, wouldn't you want to know before you start trying, before you get pregnant, if there's compatibility or a lack of compatibility genetically for a specific disease, if your partner is also a carrier for that disease? And I thought it was like pretty simple. It's just like a 23andMe type of thing, but correlating the two genomes. And I was like, yeah, I want to do it. And then I started talking to startup schools and wanted to do an accelerator, but I clearly didn't have the motivation because I was not, like, I really didn't care. To be honest, I didn't care about the problem. I didn't have it. I didn't know anyone in the world that had that problem. It was just something that I thought made sense. And that startup, again, also exists and they're doing great. So, but yeah, those are the failed attempts.
Okay, well, good. So generally what you take, the problems you take on become smashing successes. And the first three you let other people be successful. But with the fourth one, you said, I cannot share this with others. I have to do this myself. And see it through. So you did, or you're on your way to. But let's start at the beginning here as well, because how did you decide to participate in this hackathon?
Oh my God, that's like the best story ever. I saw an ad on Instagram. That's the story. That's the story. I was scrolling on social media and I saw an ad on Instagram that was like, it said something honestly low-key obnoxious. It was something like disruptive minds needed. And I'm like, that's me. I'm a disruptive mind. Click. And it turned out to be a hackathon by the European Union or European Commission for 100 young scientists all across Europe. And I had a somewhat limiting belief until then that I never got accepted for these things. That whenever I applied to summer schools or programs, internships, like anything that was cool, that I thought was cool, I never got it. So I will be honest with you, I postponed the application until the very, very, very last day. Because I was like, why bother? I'm not going to get in. I never get in these things. But then I made the decision to take things differently this time. It was kind of an essay. The application was kind of an essay, and you had to say why, like why you're the right person to participate in this program. And of course, you had to link it to your background, in my case, which was science, biotechnology, biochemistry, etc. And instead of filling out the application as just any, like, these are my skills and this is my experience in the lab and this is what I do for a living now and this is the lab I work at now, I decided to just become or bring out the creative part of me that I had through YouTube and other I guess aspects of my life developed, where I combined creativity and science, more of a storytelling approach. And I just gave it my best. I said, well, like, I have a huge desire to impact people's lives that go beyond my lab. And I think being at this hackathon will allow me the opportunity not only to think beyond my limits, but also meet people that have the same desire than I have. Otherwise, no one goes out of their way to even be filling this application right now. So yeah, so the day I got the email saying that I was accepted was a very happy day.
Okay, so and then you went there. You were still skeptical at that point, or?
No, I was like, no, I was everything but skeptical. I was like, this is going to change my life. I knew 100% that hackathon was going to be the place, because remember, this is like me already trying to find a startup to do, right? Or trying to find an idea in the team that really motivates me and excites me. And I knew that the hackathon had very high chances of leading to me finding the idea and the team. And that's exactly what happened.
Okay, so you're going there and you meet Pablo on the first day and you say, here's the problem and this is what we're going to do, and we'll be riding off into the sunset with the startup. No, I mean, really, were you matched randomly with Pablo, or did you guys
We were matched randomly. We were matched randomly. Pablo was actually not technically a participant. He was a buddy. So he was helping the team, but he was part of the team essentially. No, there was like 5 of us, I believe. We all had the idea. I mean, the idea we had at the hackathon is not the idea that we have now. Obviously, it evolved. The idea back then, for context, was to repurpose. I mean, the concept, I guess, is still the same. Repurpose COVID centers, COVID testing facilities to look for cancer biomarkers or lung cancer biomarkers, particularly, because we had this kind of revelation that if everyone got tested with nasal swabs during COVID, and it was late 2022 at this point, why let the momentum die there? Why not take that same approach to diagnose other diseases? And we were focused on cancer. Pablo is also a cancer researcher, so it made sense to start with lung cancer. That was tied with a personal situation that I was going through, where my mom was having she's at risk of lung cancer. So she was having what could have been symptoms of lung cancer. And in my head, I thought that when you have symptoms of such a terribly deadly disease, you simply get tested for it to rule it out. Like, that's the first thing you do, rule out. But that's not what we experienced. And that was also the beginning of the journey of my mom going through months and months of unnecessary testing for other diseases and doctor visits, etc., for only for us to know 50 months later that it was fine, it was something else, not lung cancer. But those 50 months we were constantly worried, and that was a realization moment for me to say, wow, it's really not straightforward to diagnose and to detect the number one cancer killer in the world. So those two things were happening parallelly. And the story of how Pablo and I ended up building a company out of that is something happened at the hackathon.
So did they like the idea at the hackathon? I mean, you guys presented it at the end.
Yes, we presented it. We got an award, but we got an award for the pitch, not for the idea. They liked the pitch. We won the pitch competition. We're like, yeah, funny enough, I followed up with every judge and everyone I could, obviously, afterward. And they were like, this idea sucks. Like, it's not gonna work. What makes you think it's gonna work? That was one thing they said. Another thing they said is, but why lung cancer though? Like, lung cancer is the worst cancer to work on. It's so not sexy. No one wants to talk about it because, like, smokers do breast cancer is great. Everyone wants to talk about breast cancer. I swear to God, this is literally what I heard from lung cancer professionals. So pretty disappointing.
So you emerged from there, and did you both live in Spain at the time? No, Pablo?
No, neither of us were living in Spain. I was living in Germany. He was living in the Netherlands, where the hackathon happened in Leiden. He was living there.
So you leave the hackathon, and then what?
We leave the hackathon, and then what? While something happened at the hackathon that just changed us separately, individually, and we didn't know until we talked about it, connecting with the problem in the way that through the tools we were giving at the hackathon, was just so transformative. Got obsessed. Like, all I could think about was what I just said, the fact that lung cancer is the number one cancer killer in the world, more than breast cancer, more than prostate, colon, all the other types of cancers people always talk about. Yet it's 70%, 60% of the time, the huge majority of the time, diagnosed too late. Why? Why are we not putting our efforts there? It just seems something so frustrating, enervating to me, the fact that we were not even close to an answer. So we both got obsessed with that and with our idea of, I don't know, if lungs are connected to the airway, if there's a tumor growing there, something has to be shed there, that some of the biomarker will end up in the airway. Like, that's just my hackathon. Like, this is me thinking at a hackathon for a few days. Of course it needs to be proven, but what if it works? Because if it works, it's huge. Like, that would solve all of our problems. And I just stopped sleeping. I was like up all night thinking about ideas and brainstorming and who to talk to. And so was he, parallelly. And the last day of the event, when we were doing the award ceremony, I told the team, guys, I'm doing this. I'm doing it. Who's on board? And Pablo was like, I'm on board. And then honestly, everyone said they were on board, but then they weren't, because, like, one thing is the excitement, and then the other thing is, like, actually leaving everything behind, quitting everything and dedicating to this full time. But that it was very amicable. Like, they were like, okay, I'm not like that excited. You guys go ahead. And then Pablo and I decided to, essentially, after knowing each other for 4 days, building a company together, which, I mean, it's been 2.5 years or more. I don't know how long at this point. And it has worked out for us. We're very lucky.
Okay. So at the hackathon, you discovered you're both possessed and crazy enough to do such a thing, equally matched crazy with different skill sets. But you embark on building this startup. And I guess you still didn't live in the same place, right? So you just did everything on Zoom, I suppose?
Yeah, we just started talking every single minute of the day, pretty much.
And you incorporated the startup?
No, we did not. So at the beginning,
Oh.
we were super lost. We were like, okay, we have this idea. What does one do when one has such an idea? Like, what are the steps? We were incredibly lost. And I can tell you, Hubert, the first 6 months of it wasn't even a startup then, just the idea that we had were by far the hardest. We were the most miserable because we were full of motivation and dreams and whatnot. But then, as you know, the next thing you do, you ask for advice, and everyone will give you completely different advice. And everyone was pointing us towards so many directions, and it was incredibly frustrating because we would talk to someone and we'd be like, we want to do lung cancer screening with nasal swabs, and they'd be like, that's awesome. You could partner with CVS and Walgreens and the huge distribution channels and remote areas. And we talk to the following person that'd be like, cancer screening sucks. There's no reimbursement. The trials would take forever, etc., etc. And then another person said, you should actually do what Cologuard did and do at home. And then the next person would say that would never get approved because of regulatory. And we, at this point, we really knew nothing. So that's why I would say the first year was a little, in terms of milestones, was a little slower, even though we've been very fast, as you know, as a company. But the first year was kind of slow in terms of milestones in comparison to the rest of our performance, because it was really us figuring out what we need to do to begin with. So it wasn't until March 2023. Oh my God, it's going to be next week will be our 2-year anniversary of OncoSwab. How exciting is that? So it wasn't until March 2023 that we incorporated the company and we decided to actually give it a shot.
And then you would have, well, I mean, it couldn't have been much more than a couple months after that you decided to apply to Health Wildcatters.
Yes.
How did that happen? I don't think I've asked you
Yeah, so
how you
I
found us.
heard of Health Wildcatters through either LinkedIn or an email or something. Like, it wasn't directly through anyone, but as I was doing research on you guys, I saw that LoopDX, which is a company based in Barcelona where I went to school, and my hometown essentially went through your program. So I reached out to them and they were able to share the experience. They were also at a very similar stage when they went through your program as we were at the time, which was we're so lost. Like, what do we do? We're so new. We've validated the problem. We have stakeholders that are interested. Now let's be a startup, right? And they were at the same stage when they went through the program. So that's when we decided to apply.
Okay. And I mean, did you just apply here or
No, we applied. Oh, no, we applied.
shotgun? Let's see what happens.
Yeah. We applied to many places, but we did try not shotgun. We were always careful that wherever we applied had experience helping diagnostic companies. That was like our one requirement. So we applied to several accelerators that had a history of helping healthcare, but more specifically diagnostic companies. But a lot of the times, like, as you know, you don't even know what to sell. Like, when we did these applications, some of the first applications we applied for, first programs we applied for, we really didn't know what we were doing ourselves. How can we even transmit it to someone else? So I think it made the timing to apply for Health Wildcatters was perfect because we were at a point where we had the idea, like the concept was solid. Now we wanted to be a startup, raise capital, engage more people, etc. We needed help with the corporate part.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So, well, I mean, we may as well stay on the track. So you come here, you participate in the program. You know, what were the things for somebody who's listening that it's considering this? Obviously, this podcast goes out to anyone that's interested in stories around health innovation, but what is it that you got out of it that, you know, you attributed value to in your situation? I know Enrique and Eduard at LoopDX, I know they got some certain things out of this, but what was it for you, and or any things that particularly if somebody listens, I mean, now you gave them a little bit of guidance, like if you're pretty early and you can, but yeah, in your own words, what would it have been that made a difference for you?
So I mean, it's super clear. We were two scientists with an idea before Health Wildcatters, and after Health Wildcatters, we were a company. I would say that's the biggest thing. So we had structure. We got our first big advisor through an investor who has invested a couple of times already in the company through Health Wildcatters. We had you guys as investors also a couple of times. So we had more validation as a company, and we knew what we had to do in terms to hit our next milestones? Well, first we knew what the milestones should be, like defining our roadmap. And second, right, because like if
what
you
are the
don't
rules?
know,
Somebody tell me the rules.
yeah, and also because, as I said, it's so important that there were diagnostic companies already in your portfolio. I think that to us was incredibly helpful because I remember you, Lauren, sitting down with us and saying, okay, this is what you guys are doing everything wrong because we had X company who, when they started, they were also trying to do the same thing, but this is what they did instead. And that also helped us pivot to a more narrow, specific, and more reachable, attainable beachhead market, like first application after Health Wildcatters. That helped our business case as well. So I would say that, like, before Health Wildcatters, we were like, yay, so much energy, so much excitement, but we were an idea and that's it. After Health Wildcatters, we had more orientation. And I think that's kind of what, if I understand correctly, what you guys saw too. I still remember Lindsay's email. Yeah, you have only an idea, no data. I don't think we even had a patent application yet. Like we were really, really early. But still you were like, I like the energy. I like the vision. So I feel that Health Wildcatters was a good program to help us capitalize on that vision and that energy and that motivation, but also structure a solid plan so that you're more than two very motivated founders.
Well, as you know, we go through several stages in the selection process. And what you're showing here right now, the passion, the energy, the ability to take a couple of pieces of negative experiences as well is what it takes. And so we absolutely, when we bet on things that we believe are a big void, and the lung cancer screening there's a lot to be hoped for there. There's just extremely bad right now. And of course, we need to see a team that can credibly execute on that. And that has openness to be helped. So this isn't an intelligence test. This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about, you know what you want, but you will be exposed to people that in good faith and as your investors can help you guide you down a path that still you determine, but they can be there on both sides, kind of guiding you a little bit. I mean, that's kind of the goal. But the main ingredient is the entrepreneurial team that has to have the passion and a credible shot on goal. And I mean, you had that. You had a great. I mean, I will admit, you're probably one of the earliest stage startups that has entered Health Wildcatters. I mean, I think you're right. You probably didn't even have a patent application yet, so it's fairly unusual for us. But still, it was overpowered by your ability to convince us and then our investors to take it on. And when the need is so big, it makes a big difference too. We knew and still believe that even if you end up being able to detect certain cancers or some cancers, there is such a big void that this could still be a big, big company and a huge advantage for humanity to have, let alone for it to become a big commercial company itself, of course, which is why we invest. Very cool. Thank you. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I love this because we're able to speak really about some of the very basic aspects of the startup, the hardships, the things that happen along the way. Can you talk a little bit about the inputs from others? So when you started developing this concept, you got input from physicians and lung cancer specialists. And so how has that helped guide you, or how have you handled bringing some of those people on board as advisors? How has that worked? And what were kind of, if you had a tip for someone, like what is your hack, like this is how I got in touch with them, or this is who helped me, or this is how I got my big break in making some of the best connections in that arena.
Yeah, there is a hack, and the hack is to get a big champion, a big person, an important person, what we call a KOL, a key opinion leader, to believe in you. Mm-hmm. Sounds so easy. And I kept hearing that. I kept getting that advice when I started out. And it was so frustrating because I'm like, as if it's that easy, as if I can just knock on someone's door and be like, hi, I have this insane idea to diagnose cancer in the nose. Will you back me? I mean, no, it does not work like that. So there's another tip there. One is to start talking to your users as early as possible. I'm not the first one, and I will not be the last one to say this. I think this is Startup 101. And second, be persistent. So I'll tell you about my KOL, our KOL. He's the chief of pulmonary medicine at Mount Sinai, New York. His name is Dr. Javier Zulueta, and he is Spanish too, so I guess that's also an unfair advantage. I identified him as a super important person to talk to when we were in the idea stage, when OncoSwab Co. did not exist. And I reached out on LinkedIn then, and he did reply, but he never fully agreed to do a call. he would always be like, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. But he's a curious person. He's a very curious person. So he was open to hearing what we were working on, at least the idea. He's very excited about that, but then he's very busy. So I, at the beginning, kind of took it personally that he would just stop responding or never made the time, just because I took everything personally at the beginning. I thought when people didn't respond is because they hated me, not because they don't have time and they're busy, like, because I didn't know better. But then I learned that you have to be persistent. And I was persistent with this man for 1 year. For 1 year, I sent him messages like every so often. You're like, hi, I was wondering, whatever. And at the beginning, I only asked to meet for to do a meeting, which was a mistake because then you're just asking and not really offering anything. And what I did later is not, I didn't really ask for something particularly. Sorry, I didn't I didn't offer something particular, but what I did was he posted something. He did an article post, a LinkedIn post on lung cancer screening. And I thought this was a great opportunity because he just typed this, so the content is fresh in his mind. And I sent him an email and said, why do you think lung cancer screening rates are so low? What factors do you think there are? And I suggested a few factors. So probably that like sparked him. As I said, like I didn't really give him anything, but at the same time I kind of did because he loves talking about that. So it was a way to engage, right? So it's not just me asking for his time. It's just a way for him to explain something that he enjoys explaining. And that started an email chain. And then I was like, that's great. I actually want to tell you about what we're building and maybe get your opinion. And when I finally got him on a call and I told him about the idea, he was like, wow, I can't believe in 20 years doing lung cancer and lung cancer screening, I never thought about this. And then I saw that he was so involved that we offered him a role in the team as well. Not just involved, he was very excited. And it was super early for us. It was the perfect stage to really come in and shape the technology even. And he has been incredibly helpful. He single-handedly changed the course of our company. He helped us develop and write the protocols for the clinical trials we're currently running, but also he single-handedly put together the trial because he had all the context. So I had been for a year reaching out to doctors with no results whatsoever, because if you just reach out to people with no credibility, really, it's hard for them to trust you. But if you come hand in hand with someone that is respected in the industry, this champion that you need to have, then everything becomes 100 times easier. Again, to summarize everything I just said, one, talk to users and talk to the people that will be using your product from day one, because their opinion is the only one that matters. Investors will tell you a billion things. Investors don't, like, with all due respect, Hubert, investors don't necessarily know specifically what your target audience needs because they can be experts in everything, obviously. Right. And second, find the big champion. That will make your life easier.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, a recurring theme, in all my conversations is persistence. And almost, I mean, it's almost not a willingness to give up, just to continue pushing until you can't anymore. And until that happens, you keep pushing. And so meaning a no answer is not an answer. It's not a no, even though at the beginning, everyone thinks that it's not a no. It's just a door that hasn't opened yet, but it's not nailed shut. But having and finding the energy also within your team, between you and Pablo and you and your advisors and whoever else you talk to keep doing it, to not give up, because there are plenty of days when you want to. And I mean, that nobody's exempt from that. And you need the help and support on those days to understand that this is attempt 47 of 100, and maybe 48 will work, but it may also not work. And so for you to do the next one, you got to have the energy, and that has to come from somewhere, and a conviction and a support system that's willing to help you. I want to pivot a little bit into, and also we're going to start kind of coming to some closing here, but I know that in your case, another thing that's special about you is that you're a communicator, and you're I mean, you could say a science communicator, really, because you explain science to people, and you have your own YouTube channel, Dia and Andrea. And so talk a little bit about that. How has that helped you, or what does it do for you? And do you think it plays a role in your success, or is it just an outlet? Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Oh, it plays a huge role. And in fact, this year, because I will admit I kind of left it behind a little, something that's a huge passion of mine, communicating science, because of course I'm super busy with the company. But one of my resolutions for this year is to come back because I understand the huge potential it has. And even with the little amount of content I've recorded in the past couple of years, I still have people come to me. The other day, I had a meeting with fellow founders, and then they said I wanted them to help me with fundraising tips, etc. Right? Like they're a step ahead of you, and they're a step ahead of me, and you always want that people to support you. And the meeting started with them saying, I just wanted to thank you because I saw the video you have on your story of on how you started your company at 24 and the advantages and disadvantages of being a young startup founder, etc. And that just resonated with me a lot. Thank you for doing that. And there aren't enough women in the space doing that, so thank you. And that just shifted the entire tone of the meeting. There is something about putting content out there that just works for you 24/7. Personal branding in the era we currently live in is such a big advantage, and it would be silly not to capitalize on that. So when I started my YouTube channel when I was in college, I had no absolute idea that it would have anything to do with what I'm doing now. I didn't start it with that purpose. I simply started it because I am obsessed with what I studied. I think it's so cool. I think mitochondria are incredibly fun, and genes, and it's just so interesting. And I remember like it's the best. And I was studying all day in the library being like, what? Wait, our body does that? Like how come? How come we're not all talking about this? We're talking about politics, like other things. Like we should all be talking about this. So that's why I started the channel, because I was the person that at a dinner party would start telling things about how, I don't know, how plants evolve differently throughout the weather. Just random biological facts. And that has helped me with my startup in two ways. Indirectly. One is because the YouTube channel led me to starting my first two companies. We talked about the failed startup attempts, but then I also started two companies that actually started, that were more than ideas. One was a science communication business that allowed me to pay the bills for the first year doing OncoSwab because I didn't have a salary. We hadn't raised money yet. So imagine how important that can be. And second, I started a merch company, like a branding company. It was going well, but the margins were too low. So I just quit it after I started the startup, whatever. But I learned a lot about running a business. And that helped me a lot. That was thanks to YouTube, thanks to doing science communication. And second, more directly related to the company, is I learned how to communicate really hard things in an engaging way. And I had done that over and over and over again through my YouTube videos. I would read scientific papers. I would read really complex things. I would make sure that as much as possible, everything that was coming out of my mouth was fact-checked, and then made it interesting and engaging in a way that's exciting for people to see, in a way that it's easy for people to retain their attention in the video. And that's something that is now my job. As a startup CEO, I'm pitching constantly to people something that really is super complicated, but I'm making it as easy and engaging and entertaining and exciting as possible. And it's something I learned through doing YouTube videos.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And communication ultimately is key, and getting a message across succinctly and keeping the audience's attention is a big deal. So all those things matter for everyone. Obviously, you have honed that skill more than most. And also, one would have to say that most scientists are not the best at that. I mean, you were kind of sorted into communication types of people, and then science people. There's not a lot that have an overlap on the Venn diagram that have both. You do need pieces of both in a startup, and in your case, you've got not just a adequate amount of communication skills, but way above that, in a real true talent. So that's beautiful to see, and it works, because just explaining the problem to people when you get an investor is important. So before we come to a close, I would like to just ask if there's anything else you would want to tell us. If somebody's listening that does have a startup, that given what we have said so far, is there anything else that you would encourage them to do or practice or start as a habit, or any tips you would leave someone with that you learned?
Yeah.
Or extremely
There's something I recently learned. I had not taken intentional time off since I started the company, and I did it last week. I took, okay, it's not crazy, but I took 5 days off. including the weekend. So like I think I did Wednesday to Monday or something. Why did it take me so long? And I remember you telling us this, Hubert, like literally I remember in the office, you were saying, we want you to be well rested. Us investors want you to be well rested because you cannot run a company if you're exhausted, if you're stressed, if you're overworked. And I'm like, yes, right, sure. But I have things to do. That was me the whole time. But then we're going to start fundraising very, very soon. And I really need to have a clear mind. And my whole team was like, Andrea, just go, leave. And I went to the mountains for a few days and I did not bring my laptop, which was very anxiety inducing at the beginning. I was like, well, what if the world ends? Spoiler alert, the world did not end. Everyone survived without me. I am not as important as I thought I was. So everyone that's listening, take some time off. That's my advice.
That's great advice. And you're right. We talk about this. We talk about, individually, not necessarily always in the group with each entrepreneur about just life and things. All those things influence you. Your business will be more or less all consuming. And in that vein, everything is relevant. I mean, your support system at home, your family situation, that doesn't mean we tell you what to do. And I've seen many different things that can work. But at least we can acknowledge a situation or a circumstance that may be a little bit harder and something you have to plan for if you will continue. And if you're with us, you've said you want to continue. So we want to find ways to support you to be successful at that, be balanced, and also have eyes wide open. In other words, some things can make it easier, some things can make it harder for you to be an entrepreneur. If you decide you want to be one, and we have already decided to take you, then you will be one. But everyone's got a different situation, and so that's something that can be discussed. And frankly, some of those things just don't get discussed. It's also hard to do with your own family sometimes or your own loved ones. And so having, some people just listen, some people just can tell you what they've seen work is a big deal too. So you're absolutely right. An investor wants his or her startup team to be at optimal performance. And that includes at times to be able to switch off, because being on 24/7 can just burn you up, and then nobody wins. So you're spot on. That's great advice. Well, I thank you for your time and also for your gift to us here and to the listeners. And I know you're a generous mentor to many as well. So I know you carry that gene in you that gives to others and helps others as well, regardless of whether there's an ROI for you. That's how we roll here at Health Wildcatters as well. I wish you all the best. We are well connected, so I get to hear about your successes, and I hope you're successful ultimately in finding a great way for inexpensive lung cancer screening, and who knows what else. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Hubert, and thank you for the very nice words. It was great to be here.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Innovating Health podcast. Be sure to follow, give us 5 stars, and subscribe to stay updated to the latest cutting-edge innovations and revolutionary ideas shaping the future of healthcare.